We are conditioned to look for monsters in the dark places. We look for them in the shadows of the woods or the depths of the ocean. We expect the horror to be something alien, something from a different realm. But what if the most terrifying monster isn't chasing you, but is actually you? In Alan Wake 2, the dark place isn't just a spooky dimension. From a psychological perspective, it is a perfect, literal manifestation of the shadow self, the parts of your psyche we refuse to acknowledge. But from a writer's perspective, it is something even more specific. It is the architecture of a writer's block. It represents the endless, suffocating loop of the draft that won't work, the sentence that sounds wrong. The dark place is the void of the blank page, weaponized against the author. If you have ever stared at a blinking cursor until the room blurred, you know this horror. In psychology, we talk about rumination, the compulsive focusing on one's own distress. In writing, we call it rewriting. In this video, we aren't just looking at jump scares, we are going to deconstruct Alan Wake 2 as a psychological case study on the torture of the creative process. We are going to look at how the game mechanics, like the plot board, light shifting, and the enemy encounters, aren't just gameplay loops. They are cognitive distortions. They are the physical embodiment of a writer fighting a war against his own mind to find the right ending. So grab your flashlight and we are going into the dark. In most games, you change the world by shooting something or finding a key. In Alan Wake 2, you change the world by editing it. This brings us to the plot board, perhaps the most brilliant mechanic in survival horror history. From a writer's perspective, this isn't magic, it is the drafting process made tangible. Every writer knows the feeling of a scene that refuses to work. You try to force a character into a room, but the motivation is wrong. You try to make it a murder scene, but the tension falls flat. So you scrap it and you change the plot element. Psychologically, this mechanic mirrors cognitive reframing, the therapeutic technique of identifying and changing the way we view a situation. But here, it's twisted. Alan isn't reframing his thoughts to heal. He is reframing his trauma to survive. He is desperately shuffling the context of his own prison, hoping that if he tells the story differently, a door will finally open. And then there are the loops, the subway, the hotel, familiar spaces made alien. This is the architecture of rumination. When we are depressed or anxious, our minds don't move forward in a straight line. They circle. We replay the same argument, the same mistake, the same embarrassment over and over again. The dark place captures the feeling of a mind trapped in repetitive, unproductive thought pattern. You think you are making progress, but you realize you have just walked in a circle. Only this time, the shadows are longer. The environment itself is gaslighting you, just like a brain stuck in a depressive episode tells you that you have never been happy in your life and you never will be. This leads us to the unreliable narrator. In literature, a unreliable narrator hides the truth from the reader. In Alan Wake 2, Alan hides the truth from himself. He struggles to distinguish between the story he needs to write to escape and the intrusive thoughts trying to keep him there. Is that voice in his head the one telling him to give up, or that he's a monster? Genuine inspiration for a dark twist? Or is it just self-hatred wearing a mask? To a writer, the line between killing your darlings and destroying your work out of insecurity is razor thin. Alan walks that line every time he touches that typewriter. If the environment is the depression, then the enemies, the taken, are the paranoia. Notice how the enemies in the dark place just aren't random monsters. They are blurry, indistinct, and made of shadow. You have to burn the darkness away with a flashlight just to see them physically. In clinical terms, this is projection. It is the defense mechanism where we take our own unwanted feelings, like our shame, our guilt, our fear of failure, and displace them onto the outside world. To a writer, the taken are the embodiment of the critics. Not real critics in a magazine, but the imaginary audience in your own head. Listen to what they whisper. They don't just roar, they mock. They repeat Alan's insecurities back to him again and again. They are the externalized fear that the work is bad and the writer is a fraud. But the taken are just the chorus. The soloist is Scratch. Scratch is the ultimate manifestation of the toxic inner critic. Carl Jung described the shadow self as the unconscious side of your personality that contains our darkest impulses. Scratch isn't just an evil twin. He represents the destructive side of creativity. He is the voice that tells you to burn the manuscript. He is the impulse to sabotage your own success just to feel something. While Alan tries to write a hero's journey, a story of escape, Scratch is writing a horror story. He is the part of the writer's brain that whispers, "You don't deserve a happy ending. You deserve a tragedy." Finally, we have to talk about the sound design. The dark place is never silent. It is filled with a constant, low-level thrum of whispers. This is the most accurate depiction of a mental block I have experienced. People think writer's block is just emptiness, a quiet room and a blank page, but it isn't. Writer's block is noise. It is a deafening noise of self-doubt, unfinished ideas, and anxiety that drowns out the one clear thought that you need. The game forces you to listen to this noise until, like Alan, you want to scream. The horror isn't that you can't hear anything. The horror is that you can stop hearing yourself. In psychology, the antidote to helplessness is agency. It is the belief that your actions matter. For the first half of the game, the dark place just happens to Alan, but eventually he learns to navigate it. He stops running from the logic of the dream and starts manipulating it. To a writer, this is the magical moment in the draft where the story starts talking back to you. You stop forcing the characters and start understanding them. You aren't just typing anymore, you're creating. And his primary tool isn't a gun, it's light. The lamp is a master class in symbolism. It doesn't destroy enemies, it reveals their truth. It changes the context of the room. In the depths of a depressive episode or a creative block, the world feels static and impossible. We call this tunnel vision. The lamp represents the insight, the sudden light bulb moment where you see the same problem from a new angle, and suddenly the wall becomes a door. Every time Alan uses that lamp, he is performing a small act of cognitive restructuring. He is proving to himself that the darkness is malleable. Ultimately, Alan Wake 2 comes with a powerful thesis. The only way out of the dark place is through it. You cannot ignore the shadow self. You cannot run from the trauma. You have to write it down. You have to give it a name, a structure, and a narrative arc. Writing becomes the therapy. By turning the chaotic, terrifying abstractness of his fear into a structured story, Alan regains control. He isn't just fixing the plot, he is integrating his trauma, He's taking the horror and turning it into art. That is the difference between a loop and a spiral. And that brings us to the final moments of the narrative. Alan delivers the line that unlocks the entire psychological puzzle. It's not a loop, it's a spiral. To a psychologist, a loop is a pathology, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. But a spiral implies depth. It implies movement. You might pass the same coordinate again, but you are on a different level. This is the ultimate lesson for any creator watching this. The creative process feels repetitive. It feels like you are fighting the same monsters and rewriting the same bad sentence for years, but you are not running in circles. You are spiraling. Every draft, every failed project, every moment of self-doubt is not a dead end. It is a necessary rotation. You have to go down into the dark to find the material worth bringing back to the light. So the next time you find yourself in your own dark place, staring at a blank page or a failed project, remember the mechanics of Alan Wake. First, acknowledge the shadow. Don't fight the inner critic. Accept that Scratch is a part of you, but he doesn't get to drive. Second, if the room is too dark, use your angel lamp. Change the context. Reframe the problem. And finally, keep trying. We write stories not just to entertain, but to survive. We write to impose order on the chaos of our minds. Alan Wake 2 teaches us that while the most terrifying monster might be yourself, the only hero capable of saving you is also you. The darkness is heavy, but the page is blank, and that means anything can happen. Write your own way out.